They brought a bunch of kids who loved to paint. After a while, what they did is they introduced a reward after every kid finished the paintings. And then immediately after that experiment, what they've done is they withdrew the reward. The results were the fact that kids who innately loved to paint stopped painting.
A lot of people don't realize that everything you're doing in your life, regardless of the outcome, is going to serve you.
There's two types of people, you know, either you're going to be extremely self-entitled or extremely self-victimizing.
At the end of the day, those steady paychecks keep you comfortable. It's such a shame.
I think the only way to break that cycle is you need to be okay losing everything.
Omar, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Thank you for having me, man.
Welcome to the Dom's Dance Court podcast.
I'm excited.
We're in a different location today, as the people can tell. Usually we do it in Spain. So far, we've done all the podcasts in Spain.
It's your first in Dubai.
This actually now is the third one in Dubai, believe it or not. But the first one in a proper, beautiful, actual studio that you made happen. So thank you for making it happen, my man.
Anytime, I got you.
So you and I met 3-4 days ago.
Tops.
For the first time.
Yeah.
And we had such a beautiful conversation. We really loved everything we talked about. I said this would have been such a great podcast episode.
Indeed.
And look at us here 4 days later. Thanks to you.
We did it. Hey,
man,
anytime.
You said I'm the doer, but you're the doer too, man. You made this happen. You were so quick. I love how, tomorrow you're traveling, that I'm traveling. So I love that
I'm glad we made it happen.
Me too, man. Me too.
Yeah,
I think it shows you how crazy, how the world works, how sometimes, like I had no clue. I had heard about you. I knew we were going to meet you that night.
Same.
But imagine how the world works. So tell us a little bit about you. So you are living in Dubai now?
Correct.
Okay. Have you always lived here your whole life?
No. So I recently moved. I've been working back and forth between Dubai and Saudi for almost 10 years now. But I've been living in Saudi. Mm-hmm. I come from a consulting background, so I was doing all the consulting corporate life. Big region. I was working in Central Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Mm-hmm. But my main base was in Saudi. And of course, UAE was one of the areas that I was covering. And it wasn't until just 2 months ago that I decided I want to move here to Dubai. All the main opportunities were in Saudi. Even with my first company when I left corporate 2 years ago, the main business was in Saudi. Everything was more or less related to that market in terms of opportunities. So it made sense for me to stay there. And then I think almost a year now, we started this venture that we met. That's how we actually met. So we started this venture and my other partners are based here now. They moved from Finland and here we are now. So
man, I remember when you were telling me how everything that you had gone through and how, even now I know that you wrote you're writing a lot, right? So there were so many things that you were talking about that really resonate with me. But I know that we have a specific limit of time. So I was very conscious when I was coming here. I was like, I remembered everything you said, but I said the one thing that came to mind, because a lot of my Mondays I spend on my time, a lot of my writing happens on Mondays. Indeed. I'm kind of curious to know in your writing process, how does it work? How do you, when did you find that you had this love for writing? Because was it when you were in the corporate world?
Yeah, I think it was way before. I was always interested in writing music, whether it's lyrics, poetry, or actually actual music. Mm-hmm. And I also was always kind of taking notes of specific thoughts. I always reflect on things. I pretty much observe a lot, things around me. Behaviors, people, thoughts, moments. So I always kind of try to document these in one way or another.
Like you take your piece of paper, like your journal with you everywhere or on your phone?
Pretty much on the phone,
okay,
iPad or what have you. And I think as you do this exercise more and more and more, you're a little bit more articulate, your language improves and it kind of becomes a little bit more artistic in how you put it together. Of course, I started very rusty in terms of writing these rusty thoughts and then looking back and I was like, that's so bad. But yeah, as you progress, I think you start to realize this could be something, or you could put them into a more, professional setup. Hence the book, and hence all of these different, thoughts and stuff.
Did you always know you were going to write a book?
No, actually,
no, yeah.
at all. But I think this started to occur, or this thought started to occur probably during that shift from corporate to entrepreneurship, when I was really documenting a lot of things that was happening to me, purely from a learning point of view, observing specific patterns that I had, making sure that, this decision was good for me. I need to learn from it. This decision was bad for me. What happened wrong and how can I improve? It's kind of, that's how it started. So
yeah, man. Yeah. I find it so interesting because I relate to you in so many ways in terms of collecting the information and going as you go, taking it all in, observing. I was telling you about me when we first met about how I was following my dad everywhere without even knowing it. And I wonder how different it would have been if I would have had a little journal with me when I was like 12 or 14, carrying and really writing down all the things in the boardroom that people are doing that I shouldn't do, all things that I should be doing. And
indeed,
I find that interesting. So then do you feel like you found your way or your routine with, because right now, how far are you along with the book?
Exactly halfway through. So.
Are you able to tell us more? I know already, but are you able to share a little bit more about the title, actually, what's about?
Actually, I was telling my like, I have someone in the marketing team and from our company, but I was telling her I needed her assistance for like more personal elements, and I wanted to kind of talk about this at some point.
So I think here we are.
Yeah, this is a perfect.
And the way the world works. See, we were meant to do this. Yeah,
it's
and
crazy.
at least you can start practicing now for all the
100%.
future public appearances you're going to do with the book.
Yeah, no,
So what's the title? What's the title, Omar?
It's called 20 Laws of Progress.
20 Laws of Progress.
So it's
you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
20 Laws of Progress.
It's pretty much a framework or a guide. I would say, I don't know if it's like a guideline, but like it's a framework to really finding your identity, whether it's in business or in life. It's not at all a coaching book. I have nothing to do with that. I'll leave it to the experts. but it's more of really documenting specific patterns that I had and things that I observed that actually worked. These 20 laws, and I was telling this while we were having dinner, like people perceive success differently. So success to you is completely different than what it is to me or other people. The only metric that we can all agree on is progress, regardless how that goes, right? And so I wanted to document these 20 behaviors or patterns that I had that if you really follow these, it's inevitable you're going to progress in life.
I like
that.
And
I really started to believe that it is actually kind of universal. So it's not just like from my end or that. So
man, I like what you said though before about your definition of success, your definition of better, your definition of a good life will vary from mine or from anybody else's. But the thing that's the same is progress, right? But then how are you defining progress in this case? Is it just being 1% better than yesterday or doing something 1% better than you did it before?
We can put it in that sense, yeah, as simple as it is.
How did you go about it in the book? Talking about progress.
I went to talk about, so there's a very thin line between a process and progress.
Okay.
And I was talking about, it started from pretty boring business side where I was literally identifying what a process is.
Okay.
So you have an input and then the transformation happens, which leads to the output.
Okay.
So to me, a series of processes is exactly what formulates the progress. So you want to make a cup of coffee, you start with, one step at a time. So it's that series of progressions, i.e. the process, which creates one progress after the other.
I like the way you put it. It's crazy at the end, just subtracting it and defining the term and really
like kind of simplifying it as much as you could.
Wow. Okay. So then at the end of the day, you can apply this to every and any single activity or thing that you do in your life, whether it's in your personal or professional life, and then see what are the series of processes you're taking in order to make that progress. That is so. Then in the book, you're taking the reader through a journey of understanding how to apply these different 20 laws.
Correct.
That will teach them how to progress better, or what's the ultimate?
I don't think the objective was to teach as much as to say, I believe for every law, I gave a personal example of how and why it is valid. I kind of validated with a specific person.
From your life? From
my own life.
I like that.
So the first law is the process.
Okay.
And to fundamentally understand what a process actually is. There's imagination is another law. Intent is another law. So there's completely different tangible and non-tangible laws that you need to kind of be aware of.
Okay. And when you say intent, you mean like having like your intention behind it? Like you being intentional with it? Or what do you mean by intent?
That's a very good question because I actually kind of put these two different, like I differentiated between intent and intention in the book. And I was saying,
tell me the difference.
So the beauty about when you say intention, so what's your intention behind something, whether it's virtuous or not?
Okay.
And when you say intent, it's basically the will or the I'm intending to do 1, 2, 3, right? So it's kind of a will. And in Arabic, there's a very good word for the virtuous will, which is niyyah.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that. We speak a little bit Arabic, but basically, so when we say I intend to do that, I say binwi amul 1, 2, 3. Okay. And so the niyyah usually is associated with the act of whether it's going to be virtuous or not. So, and we always say, like, for example, if I want to wish you good, I would say, may you get based on your niyyah, based on your intention, right? That's the most fair or like, wish anyone can provide you. Because it's actually very, very just when I
Okay.
say may you receive based on your intention or intent in that sense. But basically, yeah. So I differentiated between intention and intent, and in the totality of that law, it's basically the intent, the actual will, and then you kind of deep dive into the whether it's the ethics of it, but mainly it's the intent of the will to do that.
Wow. And then, wow, that's such an interesting way to separate both. I
hope I
like
expressed
that.
it
Yeah,
right,
you
'cause
did.
I
You
didn't
did.
overcomplicate it on.
No, it makes sense. It makes. And then what? So I mean, I don't want you to tell me all the 20 laws, but
Yeah.
So what was your process for coming up with? So again, you're fully based this on your personal experience and everything that you were collecting data on through your life. So everything you were basically doing in your everyday life, every week, every single minute,
Correct.
was all data collection.
Absolutely.
Wasn't
and this
it?
was over a period, like I've been writing this book since probably a year.
But maybe even before, because probably you were
Well,
observing
exactly,
and things
exactly,
before, right?
exactly.
I find that interesting because I think a lot of people don't realize that everything you're doing in your life, regardless of the outcome, is going to serve you if you then apply it and use it. Like in your
100%.
case, look, this is the perfect example. This is the perfect example.
100%.
You ended up what you said for the past year, but let's say even from before that and in the past year, you were doing a series of things in your life every single day from the minute you woke up to the minute
Yeah.
you go to bed.
Yeah.
And everything was serving to you as a point of data collection. You were just
Absolutely.
collecting data
Absolutely.
that then allowed you, that then you thought about, you were intentional in this case with it. You paused and you said, I could use this to write a book and help other people, and also help other people. If as long as it helps me, I'm sure you're writing it for yourself more than anybody.
Yeah, totally.
Am I wrong? Or
Yeah. Like I didn't have any purpose on like the impacts as much as it's me documenting specific
I like
patterns.
that. And that's the power. That's the power of writing and sharing. And if it helps one other person, then great.
100%.
Man, I like that. I like that. See, this is, I think, is such an important lesson that a lot of people don't realize how powerful that. Because I think a lot of us, and please let me know if you agree, but I think a lot of us care so much about the outcome of something, and when we do it, the reason that we sometimes don't do things, like let's take your example of writing a book. I know so many people who would have died and killed to write a book, but the fear of failing and the fear of failure from the process of writing the book is too great, so then they never started.
100%.
And did you feel like you had that a little bit when you were starting writing it, or it never? You just
Had what exactly?
that fear of failure of like, what if I don't finish it? What if nobody likes it? What if nobody reads it? Having a little bit that voice of doubt.
I don't believe I have that concept ingrained in me at all.
I like that.
Like genuinely speaking,
Why do you?
I'm not
why do
saying
you,
this like
yeah.
I
No, but why do you
genuinely
think?
don't have that
Why do
concept.
you think so?
Because I learned firsthand that nobody will save you but you.
Nice.
And you can sit down and say, okay, yeah, what if, like as cliche as it might sound, and all of these, things that you hear out there, but it's a very genuine thought that nobody will save you but you. And there's two types of people, at least from extremes. Either you're going to be extremely self-entitled or extremely victimizing. And if you touch any of those, then you're screwed. And then everything related to how you process things and in terms of your progress and what you think about yourself, this is where your insecurity starts. But if you really genuinely do things for doing the things because you actually love them, and for the pleasure that it gets you, for the fulfillment that it gets you, and the fact that you're expressing yourself, I think things will unfold on their own. Like,
Yeah, it's true.
So I don't have that concept at all in terms of fear of failure. I'm sure you have that self-doubt probably at some times, but then it's your job to control it.
You know what I'm hearing when you're saying is you're hearing, I think you were very hungry for this. You really wanted to make this happen. You were very determined. You had a big drive, and that kept you going.
I could say so. I mean, I think it's because I've been writing for a long time. And I had funny story actually. I was in Madrid in July.
Okay.
I think I told you
this year?
Of this year, when my bag got stolen.
Yeah, you did.
And I had 3 small booklets of quotes I wrote and thoughts and reflections that I was planning on publishing.
They were yours.
For the past 15 years.
Oh, no.
All gone. And it tells you a lot. Like I think it's like I have a lot to say in general. Whether I want to share it or not, then that doesn't matter.
That's irrelevant.
But I had a lot to say, and I was writing them down. So probably this, as you said, this hunger, this flow of information that I had, I just put it out there.
And that's what I'm saying when I said that you have that drive. I can tell, and I noticed this also when we met on Thursday, that you had this, especially the way you were communicating, and then when you told me your whole story from when you left the corporate world to now doing your own thing, and really, and how your whole thing is taking off and is doing super well, and now also that you're becoming an author and And now the thing about the poetry that got stolen, I didn't know I remember you told me your whole bag and everything, but
Yeah.
man, how devastating. But do you feel like maybe this is too deep of a quote, not too deep, but as in a lot of people, that we all have to say that things happen for a reason. And I do believe in that. I don't know if you are a believer of that, but do you feel like you were able to consolidate yourself with that understanding of, okay, this got stolen. So like, I'm sure you were very, very
I was very frustrated, but then I think this is how you reprogram yourself. And I don't mean to be very idealistic in that sense, but the only way I made peace with it is the fact that I still have my brains.
Nice.
Like as simple as that.
And you could just produce more.
Yeah. Like that's the
See, so that's what I mean by hunger. I think the way I see, and my dad was the one who first, and you met my dad, but he was the one who was the one who introduced me to the concept of hunger when I was super, super young. And because we grew up in a very comfortable family, we had a very nice upbringing. He didn't, for example. I think he shared this with you maybe on Thursday, or maybe I'm
slightly. I'm yet to explore that
a
story
little bit. But he had said to us somewhere that he had a very challenging upbringing, and he took care of his parents, of his siblings, and he didn't want his kids to have the same challenging upbringing, but he still wanted us to have the same values that he learned from that upbringing. And one of those values that he learned was hunger. But in his case, it was more about survival, where he really, if you think about hunger for food, literally think about the people on the street. They beg people who they don't know from a hole in the wall. They beg them for money.
Right.
They ask you for food. They will do anything. And now if we think to a less extreme of an example, some people will go into the worst jobs in the world. Why? Because they need money so that they can live and have food and just, right? So like the basic needs. But what was super interesting and what I saw, and you're showing the perfect example of this hunger, is even despite the fact that things didn't go to plan, things got stolen, I think a lot of people, and I'm sure you agree with me, there's so many people who have all these big dreams, all these big aspirations, they have all these things they want to do, but end up not doing them when things don't go to plan, when things go the wrong way, when other people tend to quit.
You're the perfect example. Like we were talking about.
You're too kind. I'm not even trying to talk about
we were talking about this, and I remember I asked you like, what motivates you, right? Because we have completely different backgrounds. Probably. Again, I'm not very familiar with your fathers, but from what you're telling me, I kind of had that hunger because. Survival of the fittest in that sense. You
had no choice.
You have no choice. And you had a completely different upbringing. But at the same time, you still had the hunger to say, you know what, it's me, it's not him. It's about me. I need to create my own. I need to do my own thing. And 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
And probably this is the reason I actually wanted to do this, because I did feel that same energy. I'm not complimenting you. It's facts. It's pure facts.
It's true, but I felt that.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have.
I felt it.
Yeah. I mean, I think hunger has no limits, whether you're you come from a super, super good, wealthy family, or you come from zero. It's really about how you program yourself and what you want to make.
I like that you keep using the word program. I like that as well. It's all up, and we can choose how we choose to program ourselves and what we see. And I agree with you, and thank you for the words, but I know you weren't complimenting it, and it's just pure facts.
Pure facts.
But I agree, and I feel that's where we over, and it just shows you again how incredible you can have two people with the most polar opposites, and again, very different upbringings, and yet still find room for growth. And I like and room for connection. And especially that hunger for me was so, because when I was growing up, Omar, my dad used to love to tell me, and not in a way where he was digging at me. He wasn't trying to make me feel bad, but he would be like, "You're not hungry enough." To both me and my brother, "You're not hungry enough.
Okay.
You're too comfortable. You're not hungry enough." And I think he'd blame himself a little bit. And my mom for just the way they were raising us, but they raised us really well, and I'm very, very grateful for it and for them. But I think that really when you're young, I don't know how old I was, but let's say for a 16-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid to hear, "You're not hungry enough. You're not hungry enough." It makes you feel like, okay, I need to be doing more. I need to be doing things. And it's you want to be careful. I was thinking about how if you see hunger as fuel, like let's take in your very good case, although your stuff got stolen, you were taken off course, you still kept going. And you're still going towards your destination, whatever that may be. So your fuel is still going. Yeah. And I see hunger as fuel.
Absolutely.
But you got to be careful, because sometimes there's different kinds of toxic fuels that may not be the best kinds. And that's why I think it's also a very thin line, right? With, and again, not in your case. In your case, I think it's a beautiful example how you kept going no matter the setback. And even look now, the fact that you're halfway through this book, it's incredible. I'm really excited to read it. But
I'm excited for you to see it.
The whole point I'm trying to say is that you have to be careful with that kind of fuel, I think. because there's talks that you have to be careful. You don't want to. I was hearing myself saying, "Oh, you got to do more. You could always be doing more. We all could always be doing more."
Right.
I could tell you, Omar, why aren't you writing 3 books?
Right.
You know, like we could. So I think my question for you now here is, because you're doing such a, you have your company now, you're writing a book. I don't know how many other things you may be doing as well, but you're trying to keep a healthy lifestyle, I presume.
Yeah.
Trying to also have a
That's
social
one
life.
law, actually, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
What did you call that law?
I haven't got into writing it, but it's about like something around physical health or physical something. But yeah, it's definitely a law there.
To keep progressing. And I think, correct me if it's not even correcting me if I'm wrong. I know this is true, that health and fitness is one of the very few things that you can see very quick signs of progress and
Absolutely.
very quickly.
And it has a direct impact on your brains.
It's crazy.
100% in terms of productivity and whether you want to function or not.
Because I find that like other avenues, other things, not like health and fitness, a lot of people don't continue them. And I see in your book, I don't know if you're talking about commitment and anywhere in it or consistency.
There is consistency there.
Because I believe that as in you can really achieve anything you want and do anything you want if you're committed enough. But like again, like in the health and fitness, I think a lot of people, we see it. You can go to the gym, you can get a really quick pump, and you can see, okay, this is what I would look like if I continue. Like you can see a little bit of what it would look like, but we both know there's so many other things, whether it's building a business, so many other avenues that you can take and really put in a lot of work, even for a year's time, and not see an ounce of progress.
Correct.
Are you taking that approach a little bit in the book as well when you speak about those small wins or those dopamine hits? I don't know what you call them.
Yeah, and this is exactly what progress is, right? Because if you let's say that's why the main rule of the whole book is not to chase success, because about how you can sustain your dopamine. And I talked about dopamine a little bit, and I think there was an experiment that, if I'm not mistaken, Huberman was talking about it.
Okay.
And it was about, so they brought a bunch of kids. I'm not sure if it was Stanford or Oxford. I'm not sure which university, but whatever. There's a research done. I'll find you the source. They brought a bunch of kids who loved to paint, put them all together. And these kids, innately, they loved to paint.
Okay.
After a while, what they did is they introduced a reward after every kid finished the painting. So the idea of success, basically. They introduced whether it's a candy or whatever, right? And then immediately after that experiment, what they've done is they withdrew the reward. So right now, you're no longer kind of being rewarded on that painting or what have you. The results were the fact that kids who innately loved to paint stopped painting.
Interesting.
Their dopamine levels got so spiked at their reward level that their natural love of painting is no longer a dopamine producer for them. So they were actually chasing that actual reward or the candy or what have you, right? And this is why I'm saying it's about the progress. So the only way to sustain your dopamine levels is to actually do this slow and steady microdosing on progress, as opposed to having this, $1 million, chasing that 1 million or chasing that car or this or this or that.
So we need to start calling you the progress expert. But it's true. I mean, you know a lot about it. I mean, when you write a whole book about a topic like this, you end up knowing so much. But I see what you're saying, because I feel that you can feel that with so many things, like what you said again, the toys and the cars and everything. You can get that, and probably for the first few weeks, you're going to be liking it and so excited to go. But 1 month in, 2 months in, at some point, you just don't care anymore as much as you did the first time.
Exactly.
So then from your perspective, you're saying we got to get small and steady wins under your belt?
One way or another. The idea is to try to, again, program yourself to say that my fulfillment, like you do not seek happiness or try to program yourself that happiness does not come from the end result. Happiness comes from the actual.
But how do you program yourself and from your perspective?
So I think the first thing is to ask yourself, why are you doing this? And this is why, to me, this book is about finding your identity, because you really need to be genuine to yourself. Are you doing this for the love of doing it, or are you doing it for the reward that it brings, right? Yeah. So do you like, you've gone into coaching do you love doing it for the virtue of it, which is helping people and all of that, or for example, the outcome that it brings, right? And the moment you start understanding genuinely, because a lot of people are not that genuine with one another, or with each other, then you can actually start. But and this is where I'm not coaching anybody. I'm just saying, like, you have to purely be genuine to yourself to answer that question. I can't answer that.
But you explained it very, very well. I this is why, and now I'm going to tie hunger back into it. If hunger is your fuel, that why, that purpose, let's say like that genuine purpose of yours that you were talking about, the reasons why you're doing it, if they're genuine and they're not for the extrinsic reasons, that is your path. That's your direction. And like in your case, again, I'm going back to your example because I do love it a lot. It's you are not writing this book because, like you said, because you want to coach someone or because you want to help other people. You want to help other people, but not because you want to reap the rewards of look at Omar. He's a great author. You're doing it because 1, you love writing. 2, you have a lot to share. And 3, if like you said, it's helping yourself. And if you can help other people, then great.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And you have a very strong foundation and reason for that. And that's why when shit gets stolen, when things went sour, you still were on the right path because you knew where you were going.
Correct. And I think it's the simple idea of really trying to identify the bigger picture. And this is why, like, I think there's a lot of people lost and they lack that direction because they're not aware of what they truly want from their, identity, like who they really are, especially. And I was one of them stuck in that corporate life. Money was just a drug, Every year you get that increase, you're happy. Then
keeps you comfortable.
But then what, right? And I think it's a tough exercise, it's a tough mental exercise that you need to do to kind of figure it out. And this is why, like, to me, I thought the book is me probably writing about, I might have figured it out for myself.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but at least that's the first.
I mean, it's your story, and nobody can argue with your story.
Exactly. So
I really like what you're saying, and even the thing that you mentioned about the corporate world. It's like you said. At the end of the day, those steady paychecks keep you comfortable. You wake up in the morning, you have many dreams you want to get to, but you always say, "I'll do them later."
Yeah.
Then later comes, and you don't do them because you're too tired, and those fixed paychecks keep you going, and then you never end up working on yourself, and it ends up being the same cycle day in, day out, and it's such a shame.
I think the only way to break that cycle is you need to be okay losing everything. At least for me, like, you need to be okay with the fact that if I go to zero, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And once you make peace with that, then I think you don't worry about your next paycheck.
I mean, how powerful are you when you have nothing to lose?
Yeah, exactly. Like once you're there. Because again, corporate people or consultants you have a lot of friends of those, and we were talking about this. Like, this is their identity. Like the fact that they make good paychecks, the fact that they have good connections, and they own, they're all in that ecosystem of financials and business and exposure clients and all of these things. They have a specific entourage that probably they don't want to let go of, or they are afraid of that perception of if I went to zero, what there's a lot at stake.
Very true.
So
very, very true. I couldn't agree more. And I like the part again when you're saying about the identity. And I believe that a lot of people don't spend enough time with themselves to even know what they want.
100%.
They get it. They keep getting their own way. So then if you're continually, like I said, going to work, doing the same job day in, day out, you're comfortable. So as a result, I believe when there's comfort, there's no room for growth. There's no room for progress.
Yeah, you become complacent and.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're in your book you talk about what's the opposite of progress? Regress. Yeah. So I guess you keep as in when you're comfortable, you're really just regressing, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is, I believe I'm not sure, but I was talking about you having the sense of entitlement or the sense of to me these are the two devils that can occupy your
entitlement
brain.
And
being a victim. So The wealthy would have a sense of entitlement, which creates less desire or motivation to kind of grow. So they grow complacent, they're comfortable with what they have because they have it.
Okay.
And then, so they're entitled, right? So they have, okay, I'm good. And then the less wealthy, on the other hand, or on the opposite spectrum, will say, yeah, but there's a lot to lose.
Yeah.
The world is against me. I can't do this. I can barely afford. They start into this, self-ridicule of that the fact that they can't do better, and then the whole world, they play the victim card, and both do not progress.
And notice how for both, it's all in the language and the way they speak
100%.
About themselves. There's a big distinction that I learned recently, earlier this year, that really served me and helped me to advance in my career and in my aspirations, was this distinction between owner versus victim. And how the main distinction between both is not really your situation, it's what you create the situation to be for you. So the lens that you put on it, the goggles that you choose to wear, the perspective you want to give to it. And it's all stems. And if somebody asks you, but Julian, like, what do you mean? Like, how do I change my lens? You change it by the language that you use. Something that we can all do.
What do you mean by owner?
So owner, when I mean owner of your life, it's somebody who's taking responsibility, who's accountable. So if in your case, again, we'll take your example of all your stuff gets stolen, and let's add into it that you needed all these poems to be ready. You were going to release your book, and it was the only copy that you had left of your book, and it gets stolen. Well, a victim, they're going to be like you said, the world is against me.
Yeah,
I can't believe this happened. Life is so unfair.
Yeah.
It's all about they, them. Whereas an owner, they speak with I. Oh, wow. I made the mistake of not locking the door, or I should have taken my bag with me, or this happened already. What can I learn from it? Yeah. I'm not saying you got, like, maybe the first example I said of I made the mistake, I should have locked the door. That's not the best one, because why would you bring yourself down? There's no need to bring yourself down. It already happened.
Correct.
But an owner would find a way of, what can I do now?
100%. Solution oriented, and
As I was saying, but it's funny about I didn't think much about the entitled crowd as well. How for them, like you're saying as well, they don't progress either because they think that they know everything and they think that everything is going well.
Yeah, because I grew up around entitled crowds.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because back in uni, I used to see their power.
Okay.
Flashy cars, all of the, the hype, the environment, the girls, and all of these things. Mm-hmm. And I was just catching up. I mean, it was a good entourage that I had because, I don't know, for whatever reason, we got along. So I was part of that crowd, but I had completely different lifestyles, right? But we still managed to have fun and all these things. Back in university, I used to perceive these as powerful figures. Like from my age, these guys are like, they got it, man. 5, 10, 15 years down the road when we all started working, and even now, I can see a complete difference in how I perceive them now. Very few of them are still, they have that still valid image of, they're powerful in terms of, ambitious, strong, career-oriented, or like capable, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to 80% of that crowd who I believed was entitled was actually just entitled because they got that paycheck from their family or XYZ, right? And again, I can say that the same on the other spectrum, which is the victims. So it's really how genuine you are to yourself. And my father used to always say, it's a quote in Arabic, but in English, it's basically, it's not who your father is, as it's very simple. It's not who your father is, it's who you actually are. So taking pride of who my dad is or who my uncle is or who my, XYZ is, it's irrelevant. That's not your doing. So who are you, right? So you cannot take pride in, especially on this, my tribe is this, or we come, especially in our Arab region, we come from this tribe, we come from this tribe. Great. But who are you, right? So it's really, to me, that's kind of how I try to now create or circulate a judgment around people in terms of what are your actual accomplishments.
And you can choose that. That's the best part. Yeah. You can choose who you want to be.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it. Right?
Yeah. But I don't think a lot of people, and this is now based fully on my experience from the people that I interact with, the people that I work with and stuff. A lot of the people that come to work with me is people who don't realize that they have the choice. They don't realize that they can rightfully choose who they want to be. They don't realize that so far where they are in their life has been a series of decisions and choices that they've made, whether they knew it or not, whether other people made it for them and they chose to adhere to them or not, and it led them to where they are today. And I find that which is why I love the coaching so much, and it's bringing things. I don't believe that coaching, self-improvement, personal growth, any progress, everything we're talking about, I don't believe that it's about judging it, but it's about bringing it to the surface. It's about noticing it. Because at the end of the day, you were just unaware. You were uninformed. A lot of people like this, again, the people that I work with, they just didn't know. They didn't know that they could make a choice because of the way society was, because of the way they were nurtured, they were brought up, what have you, the internet, so many factors. But so it's not worth judging. You can't worth judging somebody 100%. Who was unaware. Like you before, when 100%. You were going through all your things, before you even knew about progress, before you started writing your book, we can't judge you. You can't judge yourself. You can't. You just had no clue.
100%.
However, I do think it could be interesting and it could be fair to say that it's worth judging if you don't do anything about it once you've noticed, once you're aware, once you're informed. What do you think of that?
I completely agree. And I think when I said judgment, I think it's my personal judgment too. I think everybody reflects a judgment or an opinion or whatever you want to call it, right? Towards things or towards oneself. But you're right. It's the lack of awareness that people probably don't know that they should take that kind of ownership or
Yeah.
you're right. Probably they don't know any better. And
Yeah.
you have to kind of coach it into them.
And you said it as well, again, before we're talking about identity. This book is a book about identity.
Yeah.
I like that because I was telling you about this at the dinner about how Erik Erikson, the psychologist who has the psychosocial stages of development, he says one of the first things before even intimacy, before whatever comes after, which is being helping the next generations and so on and so forth. One of the first things you do as a young adult is find your identity, and many people have to refine their identity at different parts of their life. And I don't know if you talk much about this in your book. If there's different parts of one's life where they will find their identity, because you're saying at the end this book is about different parts of their life where they will find their identity. Because we were saying how when you're 18 to 21, usually you have your first identity crisis where you got to kind of figure out, where do I want to study? Where do I want to live? Or what do I want to work in? Have to figure out your sex life, figure out just everything.
Right.
You're dealing with so much things at once. Then usually at around 21 to maybe 23, you've kind of figured it out. Again, very different depending on the environment, your circumstance, where you live, who you are. Anyway, then you have kind of a second identity crisis at when you're around 30 to 30 something. I don't know. Don't want to generalize, but let's say again. So I think it's interesting that what I'm gathering from is that your book can serve people, many people, no matter. It can serve somebody who's 50 having a midlife crisis, a third identity crisis in his life.
Yeah.
As much as they can serve somebody who's 18.
I really like how you put it, or I'm going to check this.
Erik Erikson?
Yeah, I'm going to check this guy out because I really like how you put it. It's like any business, right? There's a business cycle. And so the way he portrays it, like 20 to 30s, like there's identity cycles in that sense. But I do believe that there is in your core a calling to that identity that will not change from your childhood to whenever till you're 100. It will be shaped by or molded by your environment and you growing up. But I think there's a specific thing that you probably wanted since you were a child, and it keeps growing and cascading. And so I did an exercise for that, and I wrote about that, and it's called the law of idealization.
Okay.
So there's two things, and I always say, okay, imagine your white canvas. Literally idealize or create in your head what is the ideal picture of your identity, and it should fall into two categories: what can be quantified and what is qualified. In that sense, so. The quantification part is you will say, for example, from the very basic superficial things, I see myself having 2 cars. I see myself having 5 houses. I see myself having 3 kids. I see myself having, whatever, right? Or 3 businesses, 5 streams of income. That's quantification.
Okay.
So just, I would jot them down. And then from qualification, what qualities do I want to have or be known by? And then I would start, okay, I want to be known as author was one of them, for example, which I later figured that I would want to be that. A man of purpose. I want to be known as responsible. I want to be known as reliable. I want to be known as honest. So you jot down all of these things, the perfect image of yourself. And then you start putting, small tasks to get there. Or for example, how many languages do I want to speak? That's in quantification, right? And then once you have this massive exercise or massive, document out there, you start with the low-hanging fruits and where am I? And then you can, that's enough work for you to be busy and enjoy life and get some purpose, right? And so that's kind of how I put it personally. And trust me, a lot of things on my board have been ticked. It was purely because of that kind of, progression and things. And that's why to me, I realized it actually works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But that's the thing that people don't realize, that they like you said yourself, you want to learn a language. They're like, but learning Arabic just feels so complicated and it's so far away. Start with what you can, the low hanging fruits. And that's how you make
where
progress.
Intent comes, and that's where, that consistency and. So there's a lot of different variables.
I love it. I love it because I've spoken about this a lot, and it might be in other podcasts, but I'm going to say it again because I believe that your confidence, and if we define confidence as one's ability to perform a certain thing well, if that's confidence, like your level of certainty that you can perform that thing well, then your confidence is fully based on evidence. Meaning, all those things like the low-hanging fruits, all the low-friction tasks that you do first, if that's your data, your evidence, the information, your indication that you're gathering, that's helping you make the progress. Because you're only going to really make progress if you started. Like rep number 3 will be arguably, or not arguably, will be very honestly much worse than rep number 93.
Yeah.
But you can only get to 93 if you started 3,
Absolutely.
5, and I think it seems so simple and so you're like, whoa, yeah, that makes sense. But then why do a lot of people not do things? Why do people have big dreams of, I want a gymnast body, and then you don't do it because it feels so far away?
And I think because, and this is a huge thing that I noticed, and tell me if you noticed that around your friends or with you even sometimes. I believe a lot of people find pleasure purely talking and fantasizing about that goal. So people keep saying, yeah, I would love to get myself, that house. And they start posting about mansions on their Instagram or that car. And in their brain, that fantasy is already there. So the satisfaction of actually having that thing was already materialized by purely posting about it. Yeah. Because it's much easier than actually working for it. Yeah. So they keep living that. They're satisfied fully by just talking about their dreams. And a few years down the road, they realize they didn't do it, and then they crash.
I believe there's a term for that called mental masturbation. Have you heard of that?
No.
I'm pretty sure it's that. And I wish we had a fact checker here, but I'm pretty sure it's that. And it's like the dopamine that they get released from speaking about it. But and again, I've been asked this question before of like, you're telling me, Julian, to create my reality through my language. I always talk about the power of language, but then what you're saying could be very construed as we're speaking it and then we're saying it. I think there's a very big difference that people don't realize, that when you say something, it doesn't mean it's done. Like you're saying, they feel you got to then match it with the action. Like what's the biggest predictor of an outcome?
100%
action.
And I think, it's purely action. When you say like talking about it, it's not about talking or posting or this. It's purely, I'm not sure how I can put it in words, but basically it's actually like, for example, if I say I want to be a leader, I can keep saying I want to be a leader, but if I don't take the tough meetings or tough negotiations or try to have some small acts of leadership along the way, which is scary, which is uncertain, which is very, risky at times, you will never know if you're going to actually be a leader or not, as you claim.
Great point.
Because we as humans, we tend to over-evaluate ourselves. Yeah. All of us.
All the time.
We over-evaluate.
But that's why I like that exercise about how to find your identity by writing down quantifiable and qualifiable things that you want. Because for me, and I did a lot of the the intangible ones, the ones that you have to be, right? I think it's just a thing of being. And you said it yourself, if you're going to say you're going to be a leader and you're going to write in your quantifiable list, you're going to write, I am a leader, like you said for you, right? Well, just saying it doesn't mean it. You got to be it. 100%. And what I find when you're talking about that list, it's a future to dive towards. It's not based on past experiences. Doesn't matter if in the past you were nothing of the things you say.
Absolutely.
It's like a future that you want. It's going to drive your daily actions.
It's forward-looking, and you can start from where you are.
But that's why I asked you before about commitment, because I find that when I write those things about myself, like I write that list for me about all the I ams that I want to become in my future as I grow. For me, writing them down is like making an agreement with myself. I'm literally like almost writing a contract, very informally, obviously, of like all the things I want to become. And I kind of make a commitment with myself of in my day-to-day life, when situations appear and I'm being tested by life. I see a lot of things in life as tests where I think like the robbery, that's a test. The way you 100%. Say, I'm a patient person. I'm somebody who's an owner. I'm somebody who doesn't react poorly. Then when something goes wrong and you're tested by life, remember that statement you made.
It's exactly that. And this is exactly what happened, Julian. Like when this happened, the first thing that I asked myself was, you claim to be patient. Show me. This was the first thing that crossed my mind because it was very devastating. And then I said, okay, you claim to be this. Now is the time. Yeah. Now is the time. And luckily it went there. And I proved to myself that I can control that.
And and you said we try to be overachievers. Is that what you said? What was the word you used?
No, we over-evaluate ourselves. So we always think we're better than what the market states we are. Yeah. Which is normal, but I think it's like a double-edged sword.
100%. And I also think it's, again, also a very fine line where you can still be like in this case, let's say in that moment where you get the stuff stolen and you're like, hey, Omar, you claim to be patient. Show me now that you're patient. There is one of my favorite quotes. I don't know if you've read the book, A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
I literally ordered it and I still...
When?
I'm yet to...
Oh, you haven't read it? Okay.
No, I haven't read it yet.
And I don't know if we spoke about this on Thursday or not, but one of my favorite quotes in there that Frankl says, and I hope I'm not butchering it, but he says that there is a space in between response or between stimulus and response. I butchered it. There's a space between a stimulus, so when an event takes place, and your response to that event.
Right.
And the way I see it is that just because you feel something, it doesn't mean you have to act on that feeling.
100%.
You want to think 2 steps ahead of like, if I react and do this action, what will be the step that comes after that? And a lot of people don't think the 2 steps ahead. They just think 1 step of like, this is what I do. And in your case, well, not now, having that list of I ams and those commitments with yourself of who you want to be and who you want to become, that already helps you, because especially if you read them every day, you remind yourself of them every day, which by the way, you can do. You can read them every day to remind yourself of who you want to become. That's going to be ingrained in your memory. Your brain's going to receive that signal. That's on one end. But then if you also remind yourself that just because you feel angry in the moment, you don't have to act on that anger. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to start crying, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Those 2 things together, that's how you become an owner.
Yeah.
That's how you start doing the things you want.
I tend to post things that I write. And one of the things, speaking of now, I wrote act, then feel, not the other way around.
Act and feel.
Act, then feel.
I like that.
Yeah. So act, then feel, and not the other way around. And this holds true what you were saying, because when that happened to me and I was in the middle of moving houses, and we just signed a new agreement with a client, like it was very, very messy. Like that month, I think August or July, was extremely hectic for me. And I acted and then felt. I actually got sick after that.
No way.
And it was normal, right? Because I didn't expect anything different. But I actually got things done. Like it's fine.
Kept moving.
Yeah, it's fine. You even if you want to break down after that, that's fine. But just make sure that you take actual decisions.
I really like that. I really like that. I like that you kept moving no matter what. It's a very strong, again, that's the hunger talking, and it's the drive that you got to keep. But you can still find a way to be gentle with your body even after. And I like that. Act.
I schedule my breakdowns. Like I think it's very important to know that when you hold or when you really take control of your emotions, then you really can allow yourself to say, okay, today I'm probably not gonna want to feel well. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I process things. Like I need a day or two. This is where I know I'm gonna probably either, I don't know, break down, or just I want to be alone, or I want to be a total.
But you seem like
disaster.
somebody who spent a lot of time with himself. That you've gotten to know yourself very well.
I like to think so. I can confidently say that.
I feel that from what you're saying and from the way you carry yourself and the way you show up in the world. You seem like somebody, and the energy you give off, you seem like somebody who's spent a lot of time with himself. Not in the lonely sense, more in the sense of you're okay with being alone.
Absolutely.
Because one of the worst fears I think all of us can have is a fear of being alone. A fear of thinking that being alone means being lonely, which is not.
We had that conversation, but I actually long for, like, I love spending alone time.
Me too.
And I need it. I think that's the most creative I can be. And
I love that. Do you tend to, when you mentioned creative, when you're creative, do you tend to like write whenever you're writing? I said when you're creative, when you're writing your books, when you're writing just anything, your blogs or whatever you're posting, do you tend to do that with music ever? Just more out of curiosity.
I used to. Actually, that's funny because I was having this conversation with a friend and she was asking me about like some playlist and like what's new. We always shared these things, and I realized I haven't been listening to music recently.
What do you think?
And that's quite strange because recently I've been doing things silently, and I don't know. It's not for lack of love of music or what have you, but the music I've been listening to, for example, I would put on like some waterfall music, like very non-melodic music. I don't know what you call it. Yeah, just actual sounds. And that's as musical as it gets. And I don't know why do you think?
Man, I'm exactly. I mean, you can ask anybody from my family to my friends. I used to be someone who had music going 24/7.
Right, same.
And I don't know if it was. Now I'm looking back and I'm introspecting, and I'm wondering if it was because I didn't like spending time alone. And when I wasn't allowing myself to be alone with my thoughts. I felt like I always had to be on the go. Like I would be late to many places. I would be putting appointments like, if I have to be there at 6 and it's in this side of town, then I'm going to make sure that I have meetings when this ends at 7 in the same place. But then that was just a recipe for stress. I could never be alone. I could never have time to myself. And the music was, I think, another way of that, of always having something going. Right. Always.
Yeah,
and now,
that's true.
Like I had this thought this morning. I was going to work at a coffee shop this morning. And I forgot my AirPods. And my initial reaction was like, my AirPods. Then I was like, wait, I don't need it. And I spent 2 hours just writing So I write my newsletters, I write my content, stuff. And I realized there's many activities that I love doing with just the raw noise from everybody. Like, especially I was in a very busy area on a Monday. There were so many people going, especially here in Dubai, so many people going. And it didn't distract me. It like fueled me. I don't know how to explain. Whereas in the past, music would do that. And now it's so interesting. I personally, just to answer your question, I feel that the difference now is because I'm so okay being with my thoughts and I like listening, observing, paying attention to where my mind tends to naturally go. And I end up using that for my writing.
And you don't need that kind of external or like, So you enjoy actually those thoughts.
And so now with the music, it's there and I'm very present in the music. I'm there when I'm in the car.
Right.
I'll play my music and I love it. And I'm still a big fan of music. Like I live and breathe and I still love music. Like I listen to it whenever I can. But what kind of music are you into?
I mean, I play music. So I play guitar.
What do you play?
I play guitar and percussion. So especially like African instruments or like djembe, bongos and all of these things. So I do love Afro. I love blues, jazz. And basically this is kind of the general thing. But of course, everything like commercial stuff is there. I like lyrics. So I like R&B and like kind of J. Cole Drake kind of things. I like lyrics, Nas and all of these guys.
But now it's like when you're doing what type of activities would you listen to that kind of music? If it's not when you're writing?
No. When I'm writing, I don't listen to music at all.
So if it's not when you're writing, when is it?
It's either in the car, driving one place to another, or probably at the gym. I could listen to these things. Sometimes when I'm working, I would just put that kind of music.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I just think it's so interesting how I relate to you so much when you said about the like not needing the music anymore the way you used to before. It's so interesting how the world works. But man, and the reason I asked much about music is because when I had first started this podcast earlier this January and we did a whole season, a lot of it had to do with music because I was still finding my why. Like you talked about my identity.
Yeah.
And I love that this whole conversation has revolved around that because I was lost for such a long period of my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with people. That's one thing I knew for sure, but I didn't know in what. And I tried so many things, but I think I didn't have enough progress in all of them. Mm-hmm. But one of the main things that stuck was music. And I wanted to do something with music. So I said, when I was creating the podcast, I wanted to learn more about, doing these, putting myself in uncomfortable situations or things I had never done before, the podcast. And a lot of it had to do with music. And every time I had a guest on, I always asked my guest at the end of the question, like at the end of the pod, what's one song that comes to mind right now that you would love to share with people? And I ended up asking it to every single person that I did a podcast with, even after when the podcast ended up becoming more of a self-development, personal growth kind of podcast. Even if the whole conversation did not talk once about music, I would find a way to always ask about the music at the end. And I feel like it's only right to keep doing that. And I want to do that with you too, my friend. So as I'm talking about this now, and I know that we're closing, so thank you for your time. Thank you for making this happen. This is the first one of many. Like it was an incredible conversation.
It was awesome.
You're such a good speaker. You're so good. I'm so excited to read this book.
And I'm excited for you to read it and give me your thoughts.
I'm expecting an early copy, huh?
Absolutely. But really,
what song comes to mind, man? Tell me when we're talking now. It doesn't have to be your favorite song. It doesn't just at this moment what comes to mind. It'll be the outro as well of the podcast. The editor will put it towards the end.
All right. So genuinely thinking, the first thing that came to mind was Changes by Tupac.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it was.
Wake up in the morning and ask myself, is life worth living? Should I blast? Oh, I like that.
So that has nothing probably to do with what we're saying, but it's actually something that came to mind now. That would be it for now.
Man, I like that. So we're listening now to Changes
by Tupac.
Changes by Tupac.
Yeah.
Omar, thank you so much for your time, my man. Much love to many more.
Indeed, to many more. And
much love.
Looking forward to having you again in Dubai.
Yes,
sir.
You
move again as well.
And you in Spain, huh?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, much love. Thank you.
Come on. I see no changes. Wake up in the morning and I ask myself, is life worth living? Should I blast myself?